The knock at midnight. The wind howled across the frozen plains of Duran 4, carrying ice dust and silence. Commander Jalen sat alone in his small cabin, sipping hot root tea. The fire crackled in the corner. His old war boots sat by the door, worn and tired just like him. He had built this cabin himself after the war. No cities, no orders, no people, just peace and quiet. At least that's how it was until tonight. Knock, knock, knock. Jalen froze. No one ever came this far. There were no neighbors, no patrols, no reason. He reached for his old plasma rifle, still polished and loaded after all these years. The knock came again, louder. He walked slowly to the door, heart steady, finger ready. When he opened it, he didn't expect what he saw. A tall alien woman stood before him. Her skin was smooth and pale blue, almost glowing under the moonlight. She wore a torn travel cloak, and her eyes, silver and sharp, met his without fear. Two small children hid behind her legs. One was holding a blanket. The other clutched a broken toy. The woman's voice was soft but clear. "I am Solari. My mate is dead. My people have turned me away. If you keep my children safe, I will share your shelter. I will share your bed, if needed. But protect them, human." Jalen didn't move. He noticed her breath was shaking. Her hands were cut. The children were shivering. Then his eyes caught something, a faint red blinking light on the back of her cloak. A tracker. Someone was following her. He stepped aside. "Get in. Now." Solari nodded and rushed inside with her children. Jalen closed the door fast and locked all the bolts. He turned to her. "You're being hunted." She didn't deny it. "Yes. They marked me when I escaped. I cut out the chip from my neck, but the children, one of them was born with a mark. They want her." Jalen looked at the little girl. She had wide, glowing eyes and soft silver hair. The mark, barely visible, shimmered on her forehead like a star. He took a deep breath. "I need to disable that tracker. I'll get my tools." Minutes later, Solari sat by the fire, her children wrapped in warm blankets. Jalen knelt beside her, working carefully. "I've seen tech like this," he said. "Military grade. Who's chasing you?" Solari hesitated. "Not soldiers, not anymore. Warlords, smugglers. They sell children like mine to secret labs. My mate tried to fight them. He died. I ran." Jalen's hands paused. He remembered his own past, the missions, the orders, the time he was told to ignore civilians. He didn't. That disobedience cost him everything, rank, title, home, but it gave him his soul back. He looked up at Solari. "You did the right thing." She blinked. "Even if it makes me a beggar at your door?" He smiled faintly. Better a beggar with honor than a monster with power. After he disabled the tracker, he buried it in a heat-core chamber under the house. It would send false signals now, far from their location. Solari put the children to sleep on a soft bed near the fire. She whispered something in her own language. A lullaby, maybe. Her voice was like a gentle wave. When she turned back to Jalen, she looked stronger, braver. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You can stay here as long as needed, you and the little ones." She walked closer. "And the bed?" He blinked. "That offer. You don't need to." She raised a hand. "I am not offering myself in fear. I offer because I do not want to be alone anymore. But only if you wish." Jalen stared into her silver eyes. "I don't make choices in the middle of storms," he said gently. "Let's survive the night first." She nodded. "Fair." Outside, far beyond the hills, a small black drone hovered low above the snow. Its scanner blinked. "Target lost signal. Last location, Northern Ridge. Units dispatched." In the darkness, 3 shadows moved silently across the ice. They had no names, only orders. And they were coming. The fire inside the cabin. Jalen didn't sleep that night. The fire burned low, casting soft shadows along the wooden walls of his cabin. snow tapped gently against the windows, but inside it was warm, warmer than it had been in years. Solari sat across from him, awake, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her long hair now fell over her shoulders, dry and brushed. Her cloak was folded neatly beside her, drying near the heat. Her eyes never stopped watching her children as they slept. "Do they always sleep this deeply?" Jalen asked, breaking the quiet. Solari didn't look at him at first. Then she nodded. "They sleep like this when they feel safe," she said. "That doesn't happen often." Jalen glanced at the little girl and boy curled up on the floor, bundled in his extra blankets. "What are their names?" "Her name is Sira," Solari said softly. "She's the quiet one. And him, he's Kale, always dreaming." Jalen smiled faintly. "Dreaming's good. Means hope is still there." Solari turned to him. "You sound like someone who lost theirs." He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up and poured 2 cups of hot water into metal mugs. He handed her one. "Why did you really come here?" he asked. Solari didn't touch the drink yet. Her fingers played with the rim. "Because there's a story told in some corners of space about a human soldier who left the war, but once saved a dying colony by breaking his own orders." Jalen froze mid-sip. She continued. "They say he went silent after that, disappeared to the edge of Duran 4, built his own home, trusted no one." Jalen set his mug down. "That story should have died a long time ago." Solari finally looked up, her gaze steady. "I followed that story, not because I believed in it, but because I had no other place left to run." Jalen rubbed his jaw, slowly. "So," she said, leaning closer. "Tell me now, Commander Jalen. Are you still that man who once broke orders to protect a stranger's child?" His voice was low. "I guess we'll find out." Suddenly, the boy, Kale, stirred in his sleep and let out a small whimper. Solari rushed to his side, calming him with soft words in her language. She held him gently, humming under her breath. Jalen watched quietly. The sight pierced something deep inside him. Memories. A little girl with brown curls. A home that burned. A war that didn't care. He shook the thoughts away. After Kale settled, Solari stayed beside him, stroking his hair. She didn't turn around. "Never wanted to be alone," she whispered. "But when my mate died, my people gave me 2 choices: burn his body and leave with honor, or keep his children and live in shame." Jalen frowned. "Why shame?" "Because where I come from, no warrior is allowed to die unless the whole family dies with him. I broke that. I ran." She looked over her shoulder. "I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to be a mother." Jalen stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "You did the right thing." She gave him a sad smile. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" A loud beep interrupted the moment. Jalen stood instantly. The cabin's outer sensor, old, rusty but still alive, flashed red. Movement outside. He looked at Solari. "Take the children to the cellar. Now." She grabbed her bag and picked up both sleeping kids without hesitation. The cellar door was hidden under the rug behind the table. Jalen unlocked his weapon crate, pulled out a pulse rifle, loaded it in silence. As Solari opened the cellar hatch, she turned. "If you fall, they'll take everything." He met her eyes. "I'm not falling." Outside, the snow was untouched, but something moved beyond the trees. Jalen raised his rifle and activated his scanner lens. The trees blurred, then sharpened. He saw them. 3 humanoid shapes, wrapped in cloaking fabric, silent, slow, careful, hunters. He stepped back into the shadows. They didn't know he had seen them. Good. Let them think they're still the ones hunting. Back. Inside, he returned to the hatch. Solari waited below, eyes locked on his. Jalen whispered, "We're not safe anymore." She nodded. Then, in the dim firelight, she said something he hadn't expected. "If we survive this, I will no longer offer you a bed in exchange for protection." Jalen stared. She stepped closer. I will offer it because I choose to, not because I must. And then she closed the hatch. Jalen stood alone again, weapon in hand. But this time, something felt different. He wasn't just protecting strangers. He was protecting something worth living for. Shadows in the snow. The wind picked up. Outside the cabin, snow swirled through the air like ghosts. The temperature dropped fast, freezing breath in midair. But Jalen wasn't focused on the cold. He stood on the roof of his cabin, motionless, hidden by shadows. His eyes tracked the tree line beyond the ridge. 3 shapes were moving, slow, silent. They were not wandering. They were hunting. Inside the hidden cellar, Solari kept both children close, her arms wrapped tightly around them. Kyle slept in her lap. Sierra, however, was wide awake, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. "I hear them, Mama," she whispered. "They have no hearts, just metal." Solari swallowed hard. She knew Sierra was different. Ever since birth, the child could sense things, emotions, energy, even intent. Solari kissed her head. "Stay quiet, little star." On the roof, Jalen gripped his rifle tighter. He recognized their movement pattern, military trained. But their tech wasn't standard. These were not government soldiers, mercenaries, maybe worse. One figure separated from the group and scanned the cabin using a handheld device. Jalen's scanner lit up. Biosignal. Detected. He fired without warning. The mercenary dropped instantly, his cloak burning away in blue flames. The other 2 dove for cover. "Big mistake," Jalen muttered. The attackers returned fire. Plasma bolts screamed across the snow, blasting chunks from the cabin's outer wall. Inside the cellar, the ground shook. Kyle woke up crying. "Shh," Solari said. "We're safe." "He's up there." Sierra closed her eyes and whispered. "He's angry, but not scared." Solari looked at her daughter. "What do you feel?" Sierra whispered. "He's protecting us like we're already his." Outside, Jalen dropped from the roof and rolled behind. A crate. His muscles moved like they used to, quick, precise, deadly. He tossed a stun mine across the yard. It landed near the second attacker. Boom! A burst of blue light knocked the enemy off his feet. But the third one, faster than the rest, charged toward the cabin door. Jalen turned, raised his weapon. But it was too late. The door burst open. Solari heard the slam. She stood up in the cellar, heart pounding, then footsteps, slow, heavy, above her. A shadow moved across the thin light cracks in the ceiling. Sierra stood. "Mama," she whispered. "I can help." "No," Solari said. "Stay down." But Sierra stepped toward the cellar ladder, her hands glowing faint silver. Upstairs, the mercenary searched quickly. Gun raised, scanner blinking. He moved toward the kitchen, toward the rug, toward the hatch. Suddenly the lights in the cabin flickered. The floorboards shook. And then, a voice. Soft. Childlike. "You don't belong here." The mercenary turned. A little girl stood near the hearth, silver light glowing from her hands and eyes. For 1 second, he hesitated. And that's when the floor beneath him lit up with a circle of ancient symbols, burned into the wood by the girl's mind. The trap activated. The mercenary screamed as the light consumed his weapon and fried the implants in his suit. He dropped, unconscious. Jalen burst through the door seconds later, rifle raised. He stared at the scene. Sierra looked up at him calmly. "I protected them," she said. Jalen lowered his rifle slowly. "You sure did." That night the snow fell harder. The cabin was still again. The bodies of the mercenaries were buried beneath the trees. Jalen and Solari stood by the fire while the children slept. "She's more than just gifted," Jalen said. Solari nodded. "Her father's blood. It carries energy from the old worlds. Some call it a curse, others a miracle." Jalen looked at her. "And what do you call it?" Solari's voice was soft. "I call it mine." She looked up at him. "And now, maybe yours too." Far away, a transmission was sent. First unit failed. Send elite squad. Do not let the girl reach her next phase. Above a dark world, another ship changed course. The real threat was only just beginning. The mark on the girl's skin, the storm had passed. Outside the cabin, the snow lay thick and untouched, hiding the battle scars beneath it. Inside, the air was quiet. Too quiet. Jalen sat near the fire, turning a small glowing chip between his fingers. It had come from the armor of the last mercenary, the one Sira had brought down. Elite tech, he muttered. No one local uses this. Solari stood across from him, arms crossed, her voice steady. They're not local. They're not even legal. Jalen looked up. Then who are they? She hesitated. They're called the Tarn Order, Shadow Group, old bloodlines mixed with machine. They don't serve a flag, only themselves. Jalen narrowed his eyes. And what do they want with your daughter? Solari said nothing. Instead, she walked to Sira's bed and gently pulled back the blanket. Jalen stepped closer and saw it. A faint mark glowed on Sira's shoulder. A small, curved symbol like a swirl of stars. It shimmered slightly, even in the dark. She was born with it, Solari whispered. Her father had it too, but smaller. Jalen stared at it. What does it mean? It means she's more than just a child, Solari said. She's a key. Sira slowly opened her eyes. She had been awake. I dreamed about a tower, she said softly, and the stars were falling. Solari knelt beside her. Shh, it's okay. But Jalen felt something shift in the air. Something inside him told him this was bigger than mercenaries, bigger than smuggling. They weren't just hunting a child. They were hunting a powerful truth. Later that day, Jalen took Sira outside for fresh air. She walked barefoot through the snow but didn't seem cold. The wind danced around her like it knew her name. He watched her closely. She stared at the sky. They're watching again, she said suddenly. Jalen looked up, but saw nothing. No ships, no drones. Sira shook her head. Not from above, from below. He stepped in front of her. Let's go back inside. But it was too late. The ground under them rumbled. Back in the cabin, Solari heard the sound and grabbed Kale. Something's coming, Aishi whispered. Before she could reach the door, a blast shook the earth. Jalen grabbed Sira and ran back toward the cabin just as the snow exploded behind them. A mechanical creature rose from the ice, tall as a house, thin like bone made. Of black alloy and glowing veins, its voice echoed without sound. Return the key. Jalen pushed Sira behind him, over my dead body. The machine opened its chest, charging a pulse weapon. Jalen fired first. The plasma bolt hit the machine's eye but barely scratched it. The pulse cannon fired, a blue shockwave that lifted the snow into the air and threw Jalen to the ground. Sira screamed. But instead of running, she stepped forward. She raised her hand. The mark on her shoulder lit up like fire. A ring of energy burst from her feet, rippling through the snow. The machine paused, staggered, then it froze completely. Its body shattered into pieces. Silence. Jalen sat up slowly, coughing. Sira stood in the middle of the destroyed machine, her eyes glowing white, her hair floating gently. Solari rushed out of the cabin and grabbed her. You weren't supposed to use it yet, she cried. Sira looked weak. It woke up by itself. Jalen looked at them both. This isn't just protection anymore, he said. This is war. That night, Solari told him the rest. Her father was not just a rebel, she said. He was one of the last people to touch the starseed, an ancient power hidden in the edge of the galaxy. It marked him. He passed it to her. Jalen asked quietly, and what does the Tarn Order want? They want to control her, or kill her before someone else does. Jalen stood and grabbed his gear. Then we leave. This cabin won't hold much longer. Solari touched his arm. Where will we go? He looked at the stars, to the one place they fear most. Far above, in deep orbit, The Tarn Order's main ship scanned the surface. A voice crackled. Target awakened. Phase 2. Failed. Move to full extraction. The human will not be spared. The true enemy was coming now. But so was the truth. The journey beyond the ice. The cabin was gone. They had left it behind before sunrise, just before the enemy's next strike. Jalen didn't look back. He knew what would happen once the Tarn Order found it. Fire, ruin, silence. But he had something they would never touch. He had Sira, the girl who burned metal with her light. He had Kale, innocent and full of dreams. And he had Solari, strong and fierce, and no longer just a guest in his home. Now, they were a unit. They were family. The snow grew deeper as they moved across the ridge, the children wrapped tightly in thick thermal cloaks. Jalen led the way, rifle across his back, eyes scanning every shape in the white landscape. Solari walked beside him, holding Kale's hand. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the Cradle Ravine," Jalen said. "There's an old listening station there, abandoned before the war ended. I used it once, for something secret." Solari raised an eyebrow. "Secret?" Jalen didn't answer. That night, they camped under a rocky cliff. Jalen set up a heat barrier and lit a small flameless fire. Sira sat close to him, drawing patterns in the snow with a glowing fingertip. "You're quiet," he said. She nodded. "I feel heavy, like something inside me is growing." "Does it hurt?" She shook her head. "Not yet." Jalen placed a blanket over her shoulders. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She leaned against him and whispered, "I saw something, in my sleep." He looked down. "What did you see?" "A place, with stars falling from the sky. And I was standing in the middle. And you? You were lying on the ground." Jalen tensed. "Was I hurt?" She nodded slowly. "But I think you were smiling." Later, as the children slept, Solari and Jalen sat side by side under the cliff edge. The wind howled above them, but their camp stayed warm. Solari looked at him. "You left a war to be alone. Do you regret leaving it now that another one has found you?" Jalen thought for a moment. "I left because I was tired of fighting for things that didn't matter," he said. "But now I'm fighting for something that does." Solari's voice softened. "You see them as yours, don't you?" "I didn't ask to be their father," he said. "But somehow, it feels like I already am." Solari touched his hand gently. "You're more than a soldier now." He looked at her. "So are you." The next day, they reached the top of the ridge, and below them was the Cradle Ravine, a massive crack in the land, deep and hidden, filled with mist and old tech ruins. At the far end, buried in stone, was the door to the station. Jalen led them down carefully. Rocks shifted beneath their feet. One slip could mean death. When they reached the station, he wiped snow from a small panel and entered a code. Beep. Hiss. The door opened. Inside was dust, silence, and power. He turned on the lights. The walls hummed softly. "This is it," he said. "This place will keep us hidden for now." Solari explored the rooms. What was this place used for? Signal interception, spy work, hidden from everyone. Sira sat in the middle of the main room, her hands on the floor. The lights above her glowed brighter the closer she sat. "She's connected to this place," Solari whispered. "She's connected to more than we understand," Jalen replied. Suddenly, Sira stood. "They're coming," she said. Jalen snapped to attention. "How soon?" "I don't know, but they won't stop this time." That night, Jalen stood on the edge of the ravine, rifle in hand. He watched the stars above. Behind him, Solari walked up quietly. "You're not alone anymore," she said. He looked at her. "I know, and I'm ready to die for them." She stepped closer, then live for them too. Jalen looked into her eyes. For the first time since the war, he felt something break open in his chest. He wasn't a lost soldier anymore. He was something else. Far above in orbit, a massive Tarn warship entered the system. Inside, a voice growled, "We've tracked her power signature. We know her location. The child, the light, the bloodline. Destroy the human. Bring us the girl." And so, the final storm began. The last line of light. The alarm buzzed. The screen inside the old listening station flickered red. Jalen stared at it, jaw tight. "They've entered the atmosphere," he said. "One ship. Heavy class. Full assault unit." Solari stood behind him, holding Kale in one arm and Sierra by the hand. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of fire. "They found us." Jalen nodded. "And they're bringing everything." The cradle ravine echoed with the deep growl of engines above. Dust fell from the ceilings. The power inside the station pulsed harder, reacting to Sierra's presence. Jalen turned to Solari. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "We always knew it would come to this." Sierra looked up. "I can feel them. They're afraid of me, but they also want to use me." Kyle clung to his sister. "Don't let them take her, Mama." Solari held both children tight. "I won't." Jalen touched the old wall panel, revealing a sealed weapons cache. He pulled out a long-range cannon and passed Solari a plasma shield. "You ever trained with one of these?" he asked. She activated the shield and smiled faintly. "My mate taught me, before he died." Outside, the enemy landed. Dark metal boots struck the snow. Dozens of Tarn warriors spread out, silent, armored, ready. Above them, the warship hovered like a shadow. Inside its command center, a figure watched Sierra through a glowing screen. Unlock the child. Eliminate the rest. Jalen stood at the top of the ravine wall. He looked down at the small force moving toward them. "Too many," he muttered. Solari joined him. "Then we buy time." Jalen turned to Sierra. "You need to go deep into the station. There's a core room. Ancient tech. I think it was built for someone like you." Sierra blinked. "Alone?" "You won't be," he said. "We'll hold them off." Sierra nodded slowly. "If I find the core, I think I can do something. Not just stop them, but end all of it." Jalen placed a hand on her shoulder. "I believe, you little star." Sierra and Kale ran down the tunnel. Solari activated the security lock behind them. Then she turned to Jalen. "I never got to say this." He raised an eyebrow. "Say what?" She stepped closer. "I would have chosen you, even if the war never came." Jalen's voice cracked. "Then stay alive long enough to say it again." They kissed, brief, but full of fire. Then the first blast hit the front gate. Jalen fired the cannon, taking out the lead Tarn unit. Solari's shield held against the return fire. They moved like one, covering each other, protecting the tunnel. But the enemy kept coming. Dozens, maybe more. For every one they dropped, another filled its place. Jalen took a blast to the arm. Blood ran down his sleeve. Solari screamed his name, but he kept firing. Meanwhile, deep in the core chamber, Sierra stood before a glowing heart of energy. It pulsed in rhythm with her breath. She touched it, and light exploded through her body. The mark on her shoulder glowed like a sun. In that moment, she saw everything. Her father's death, her mother's pain, Jalen's quiet strength. She whispered, "I won't let them fall." Back at the tunnel, Jalen dropped to one knee. Solari covered him with her shield, but she was tired. Her arm burned. Her body trembled. The enemy closed in, and then, boom. A wave of pure white light burst from the tunnel. The Tarn warriors froze. Mid-step, the warship above cracked down the middle. The earth shook. Every enemy weapon fried. Jalen looked up through blurry eyes. Sierra walked out of the tunnel, surrounded by pure energy. She wasn't glowing now. She was the glow. The Tarn troops fled. The warship lost power and fell into the ocean beyond the ridge. It was over, not by war, but by light, by a child who had chosen peace. Jalen collapsed. Solari caught him, holding him tightly. "Stay with me," she cried. He looked up at her. "You still want to share that bed?" She laughed through tears. With no conditions this time. That night, the stars above Duran 4 shone brighter than ever, and inside the broken station a new light was born, a family that chose each other, and a girl, once hunted, who had become hope itself. The family that burned brighter than war. The battle was over. Snow covered the wreckage of the enemy ship. Smoke still rose from the crash site in the far distance. But the war had ended. Not with more blood, but with light. And in the heart of the ravine, there was peace. Jalen woke in a soft bed. His arm was bandaged. His chest ached, but the pain was distant, like a memory already fading. Solari sat beside him, her eyes tired but smiling. "You're alive," she whispered. He smiled back, slow and crooked. "You didn't think I'd leave you now, did you?" She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Never again." From the next room, the sound of small feet came running. Sierra burst through the door, her eyes glowing gently, no longer unstable, no longer afraid. She threw her arms around Jalen. "You came back," she whispered. He hugged her tight. "Always, little star." Over the next few days they cleaned up the station. Solari built a greenhouse inside the lower halls. Kale drew on the walls with bright-colored dust. Jalen reinforced the outer gates, just in case. But no one came. Ducky. Tarn order was gone. Sierra had erased their command code from the stars. Now they were free. One evening, Jalen and Solari stood outside beneath the sunset. The sky was gold and orange, and the mountains glowed like fire. She slipped her hand into his. "I used to believe my life ended the day my mate died," she said, "but I was wrong." He looked at her. "You think it began again?" She nodded. "Yes. With you." Jalen didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, glowing stone, one that Sierra had shaped from pure light. He held it out to her. "No vows, no speeches. Just this. Stay. For good." Solari blinked. Then smiled. "I already have." That night they sat around the fire. Kale climbed into Jalen's lap. Sierra rested against her mother's side. Outside, the world had changed, but inside this home, inside this strange, powerful little family, it was safe. Warm, whole. Far away, across the stars, stories began to spread. Whispers of a human who defied death, an alien widow who stood against war, little girl who glowed like the sun, and a new kind of family on that burned brighter than any weapon.